Hello, hello. Good morning, Kadena fan, Kadena army, Kadenians out there, anywhere, everywhere, at all times of day. So happy to have you back at Kadena Campfire. Community call number 24 happens to be my favorite number, and we happen to have one of my favorite guests. John Wiegley is with us here today, Chief Technology Officer of Kadena. John, welcome back.
Thank you very much, Tyler. Great to be here again with you.
So fantastic to have John. I know that many of us have met and talked with John before or heard him speak at a campfire. For those that haven't, John is an amazing programmer, background in open source communities, has contributed heavily to Emacs, a very popular editor for programmers, a programmers editor, a programmers editor, if you will. In any case, we have a really great set of discussion topics and updates and some pre-asked questions. And of course, we're going to make as much time as possible for the live questions. So please feel free to chime in on the live stream. I see that we have some people already coming in on the chat. Let's see here. Mike, we will be getting all to what are we doing? So a lot of cool stuff happening here, and a lot of those students have come to fruition even in the last week. So excited to share some news and updates there. See that we have, Iskander Sasi is in the house. Amazing. Great to see you here. Have a lot of great folks here. I see Barbaric Puma is here. Hello, Puma. Crypto Junkie. Hey, folks. Great to see everyone on the stream. Hello, beautiful people. Right on. Well, I'm going to jump right into some updates here. So first of all, we have a really cool blog post that was shared on top 5 real world, as I pull it up live here, real world use cases of redefining ownership and empowering creators with Marmalade. How cool is that? So definitely come check this out, showcasing some of the latest advancements in NFTs, fractionalized investments, gaming NFTs, authentication and identification, supply chain tracking, trade finance. So NFTs are the future with Marmalade, powered by Kadena. Lots of cool info in that article. We also have an episode. Vue.js Forge episode 4 event is live. Lots of interesting panels, discussions, and building sessions. So you can check out the full itinerary. We'll post that here below in the chat somewhere. There we go. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, definitely go check that out. And there's a recording also of the recent Whalecoin Twitter Spaces session. So that was another great dive into Marmalade and all things NFT and polyfungible NFTs. So definitely check out the Whalecoin Talk Twitter Spaces. It's a very approachable environment, really good source of information, and some in-depth conversation too. So good range in terms of covering more of the business angle as well as some of the more technical side. Should be a great discussion to check out. Next up, have a excitement I'm actually really stoked about. This is that GitHub now supports syntax highlighting for Pact. So this is actually kind of a big deal. It sounds like something that's a very sort of developer-centric thing, and it is, but let me just show you a little bit about what this means. So GitHub, of course, is the preeminent website that acts almost like a social media qua professional development qua important resource for programmers all over the world. It's a website that many of us use every single day. I personally look forward to going on GitHub and seeing what notifications I have and what's happening with my favorite projects and engaging with what people are doing. And something that's really freaking cool about GitHub is they also are a source of discoverability. So people oftentimes will discover new projects by going on GitHub and seeing notifications. So for example, if you now look at Thomas Honeyman's real world Pact repo, right here in the languages section, you see that it now shows that 48% of this repo is written in Pact. And so what that means is that you can actually click Pact and you can actually start looking at, well, they're still updating some things, but you can start looking at other repos that use this Pact language, and GitHub is now going to be indexing all Pact repos, which will increase discoverability of Kadena projects and allow people to find other source code more readily. And ultimately, as you jump through repos, people sometimes will click and be like, oh, what language is this? And so another great advance in terms of discoverability. And the other piece here that's so cool is the reason why Pact is now supported by GitHub. And I was just talking to John about this, is because Kadena and Pact has now crossed a critical threshold in terms of the number of projects on GitHub that are written in open source in Pact. John, do you happen to remember what the number was in terms of that threshold?
I don't know the particular number. No.
Yeah, so I think it was pretty high. It's something like you have to have more than 200 repositories or something written in the language, or 1,000 different files, something like this. But there's a really great sign in terms of developer adoption that we've crossed this threshold, that Pact is now an official language supported by GitHub. So that's a awesome recognition of all the hard work of the Kadena core team and the Pact team in terms of getting Pact to this milestone. And let's see, I think I had one more update that I can't forget. Of course, last but not least, quick shout out to Koala Wallet, who've released an awesome browser extension for the beloved Koala Wallet. So that is super cool. I already have Koala Wallet on my iPhone, as I know many of you do. And Koala Wallet is now live on all Chrome stores. So check out that announcement below. It looks beautiful. Expect nothing less from Kobe and Co. Really cool to see all the momentum with Koala and the continued development of the smart wallet that is pioneering across Kadena and more. So really great work. So with that, I think that is the last of our updates. I see we got Unit in the house. Super cool. Hello, Unit, the Universal Transaction Token. Awesome to have you here on the stream. Definitely go check out that project. They're up to some really exciting things. I hope someday in the future we'll have you on the stream as well. I see we have got One Hit Aquita here. I'm sort of going in reverse order here. Hello. Good morning. Hello, Kadenians. What's happening with Kadena? Yeah, good question. Noah, hello. Noah in the house. Love it. So yeah, I see everyone has trickled in here. Really amazing to have so many friends and colleagues, friends on Twitch. Yeah, echo that thought. Hope everyone's doing well. All right. Oh, we got a LinkedIner. Welcome on LinkedIn. Kadena Ireland is here. Hello. Yeah. Hey, Iskander, happy that you found this project as well. Always great to expand the Kadena fam and introduce new people to blockchain, Web3, the Kadena crew. I like that alliteration. I'll start using that if you don't mind, Barbaric Puma. And yeah, we got some amazing things. So I'm going to try and catch up with some comments as I asked John a question here. And so, John, just to kick things off, I know we had some great questions asked on Discord, but people were really excited to hear a little bit last week when we talked about ETHcc. I know you were there in attendance as well. Would love to hear if you could share some insights from your attendance at ETHcc.
Sure. So I went to ETHcc kind of with a specific mission, which is I wanted to attend everything ZK that was happening at ETHcc. So I first went to ZK Lambda Week, which was a hackathon for 3 days. Then I went to the main conference, attended all of the sessions that were going on that were on the ZK topic. And then finally, the last day I was there, I went to an event called ZK Day. And so I did also see some of the other stuff that was happening and being talked about related to account abstraction and some other stuff happening in the Ethereum ecosystem. And what I walked away with was this strong impression that there is a really big movement that we've all been seeing towards modular and L2, but that ZK is going to be a huge component of that movement because it gives us some of the privacy, it gives us some of the guaranteed security that we've come to expect from blockchain and that we need to have if we're going to be bridging multiple chains together. So to me, ZK looks like a way to integrate in a lot safer and more secure fashion with other chains. And I kind of thought this is something that I would like to see Kadena do as well, because there's a lot of value out in the world, a lot of users, and we're sort of siloed into different ecosystems at the moment. But if we could be bridging more of that value and more of those use cases, I think it just is of general use and appeal to all of the people who might use the Kadena blockchain. I kind of felt like because it was an Ethereum conference, this wasn't really the place to go to look for Kadena users. But I wanted to make sure that we don't become just this beautifully perfect and wondrous island, but far enough from the main shipping lanes that not enough people are coming to visit to realize what we have to offer. If I can integrate, it's not necessarily just about me going after other people's value, but also of demonstrating to them the value that we can add to the things that they're already doing.
Right on. Thank you so much for that, John. I see a favorite question in the chat, and let's jump to it right away. This is, of course, when ledger. This one is uniquely asked with an H in the when, so you know it's a serious.
That's right. Okay, so the ledger update. This is a long, ongoing saga, and it gets asked about a lot, and I'm sorry that everybody gets frustrated by the answers, but there are some things that are outside of our control. Technically, we created the Ledger app that is used on the device to send coins. I have used that app myself to send coins on mainnet. It works. It was working a year ago. But to get onto the Ledger App Store, which is what you need in order to install the app safely to your Ledger devices, you have to go through their process. They have an auditing process. They have a review process. We sought to accelerate this process by actually hiring an outside independent auditor who's recognized by Ledger to try and get this app into their app store sooner. That audit was completed. Ledger reviewed the audit. They sent back their comments. We responded to the comments. We addressed all the issues they came up with. We had a secondary follow-on audit or a Delta audit, sent that back to Ledger. It is now in Ledger's hands once again. They're giving us the signal that everything is looking good so far. But I am just as eager to have this ability to transact Kadena on a hardware device as you do. Like my Nano X that I use on other projects won't work with apps that are installed directly through developer mode. It will only install apps through the App Store. So I'm with you. I'm with you guys out there of wanting this to be on the App Store and usable. It should just really be coming out anytime now. The problem is, though, I can't give you any prediction. It's been a frustrating, long road. But I can tell you that we've done everything on our side possible to make this happen.
Thanks so much, John. Appreciate the comprehensive answer. All right. We have a couple other questions on Discord I want to jump to. This is always an important one. How are you planning to lure and onboard more developers?
So this is a great question for actually my colleague, our Chief Experience Officer now, who is the one focused on developer relations and developer experience. We are revamping all of our documentation right now. We are working on creating a Kadena Academy, so a school where people can submit and complete exercises to learn Kadena more readily. You can actually earn Kadena learning points as you progress through this school. We are constantly looking for ways of working with grantees in our ecosystem partnership of how we can extend our environment, extend our offering to make their lives easier, make it easier for their projects to integrate. And just also looking at our web experience, like what is our web UI around our module explorer, for example. I was talking to one of our developer experience programmers just this week about the new module explorer he's working on, which gives you a way to work in Pact in your web browser and sort of explore the space of modules that have been installed on chain. So all of these things are actively taking place right now. I know someone said in the comments, like, is this going to be another talk where they always say soon? You know, if I had it done, I would have already given it to you. So if I'm here talking about it, it means that it's not quite ready to be shipped yet, but it is soon. It is coming. But there is a lot going on because and you should know that our developer experience group over the last year has exploded in size. It went from just a handful of developers to now one of the largest departments within Kadena. So we're taking the developer side of things extremely seriously. And we want to revamp that experience and make things 100 times more accessible and easier for new developers because we want lots of people coming to the platform.
Yep. Yep. No, that makes total sense. Absolutely. And it's been, I think, very gratifying and exciting to see all the activity developers. We talked just briefly at the beginning about how we just achieved this really high recognition milestone of GitHub now recognizing Pact as a language and how that is a direct quantifiable metric that you have to hit a certain level of activity. GitHub has a very precise threshold for when they recognize a language, and we just passed that for the first time. And so I think that's really exciting, and of course that really just shows about all the activity and developers that are happening. I know that there's new grantees that are in the works that have been given grants that haven't yet been officially announced, and that's really, really exciting. We're excited to go into more detail there, and as projects decide their own timeline for when they want to announce that and share more. But yeah, we have some pretty great, I think, questions here. I want to go to this one from Elvis Sabanovic on where can we learn more about cryptographic primitives of Kadena?
So I assume that I met Elvis actually in Paris.
Cool.
So hello, Elvis. So I think he might be talking about the underlying crypto that Pact and Chainweb use, because Pact itself as a language doesn't make crypto readily accessible very much. I think that in our documentation right now, that type of information is a little buried because it's not part of the direct developer experience. So it's an interesting question, though, kind of like, what is our DNA? What are we made up of? I'll have to take that question back and see what we want to do to surface that information a little more readily, because there are like particular hash algorithms we use in our miners, particular hash algorithms we use in our block when we hash blocks to construct the chain. But I don't today have one resource that I could point you to that gives you that list.
Yep. Checks out. From KDA Miner, is the bridge to Cosmos still something in the works?
I am not aware right now of active work being done on a bridge to Cosmos.
Yeah.
Do you have any information on that, Tyler?
I do, but I can't remember what I'm allowed to share, what I'm not allowed to share. So yeah, there's some efforts on the Kadena eco side of things, and on the bridge front, bridges are incredibly important. Cosmos is a critical ecosystem. Ethereum is a critical ecosystem. And there are parallel efforts going on to make bridges happen. And we all recognize how critical bridges are to the broader integration with the crypto ecosystem. So KDA Miner, as usual, your questions and insights are spot on. And yeah, I hope that was sufficiently bullish while vague.
Right. And I'll a KDA Miner. I mean, I'm really overseeing all of what's happening in core engineering, so it's more of the Haskell side of the world. Tyler is far more up on our eco and external project side of things.
Yeah. Oh, actually, this is wasn't commented related to this discussion, but pretty spot on. Got to branch Kadena into other ecos to show off everything great we have to offer.
Yes. That's a great summary.
Yeah, that's a really, really well said. All right, I'm scrolling through. Oh, this is interesting. I don't know if I completely understand the question. What is Pacts USP? John, does USP mean anything to you?
No, that's not an acronym.
Hey, Pericles, Galanakis, rather, would love to answer this question, but if you could clarify what USP stands for, that would be helpful. We'll come back to it if so. Let's see here. Floris de Best Floppy. When VS Code update?
That's another question for our developer experience crew. I do not have the timeline for that.
Yeah, good question. Good question. That's a great Randy question. We'll have to get Randy back on here, some other dev experience folks, and get back to you. Let's see here. I see. I actually know this was a joke, Raw on the Wizard, but I think it's actually a great question. John, could you explain to me, like I'm 5, what is cryptography?
What is cryptography? So cryptography is the ability to take information and either obscure the content of that information so that it can only be received by a particular recipient, or guarantee things about that communication, like the fact that it has not been altered in transit. And it just uses math to make those claims.
Awesome. That was fantastic. Yeah. I see Crankk number 1 on KDA. Yeah, Crankk is driving a lot of the transactions on Kadena right now. That's absolutely true.
Yep.
When stablecoins, good question. That's kind of a Kadena eco question. It's certainly, I think, dependent on a few different approaches. I think bridges are the most rapid approach to bringing stablecoins on the platform. So working with existing partners that have built bridges to other ecosystems, and folks are currently in the Kadena eco side of the arena, working in this domain for sure. So high priority. Yep, Cloud, thanks for emphasizing no price-related comments and discussions, please. So this is the one rule that we stick pretty stringently to. So there's other forums, unofficial Telegram groups and such where people discuss price and trading, but in any official Kadena communications, we're happy to discuss everything about the technology and the platform, but we don't do any price talk. Yep, it must be fun to be John. I agree. Unique selling proposition. Point. Thank you. So let me try and go back to this question. What is Pacts' unique selling point that keeps competition far from copying, creating a similar process, and why other languages aren't able to become friendly for Web 2 devs?
Well, so a lot of projects have taken the avenue of using a VM as the underlying mechanism for executing contracts on their chain. So the EVM, of course, being the most well-known within the Ethereum ecosystem. We've taken a very different approach. We evaluate code directly on chain. So we take source code unmodified. We don't compile it. We don't reduce it to some other form. We evaluate that code directly so that you can easily audit and know what the chain is actually going to do. All you need is access to the evaluator source code in order to convince yourself exactly how things are going to operate. And that's all open source, public source code. That's a tough thing to do. I mean, you can't just whip one of those out overnight. So another company that said, hey, we also want to make a really safe, not Turing complete language that's going to make contracts close to the source code and safe and secure to operate. They could make that choice. They could run after us, but it's going to take them a while to catch up because that's a big technical lift. So this stuff is just not really like weekend activity kind of stuff. That's really what it comes down to. You're building a car here, and you would have to build the engine, you'd have to build the transmission, you'd have to build the whole thing up. Could totally be done, right? I mean, Kadena came out of somewhere just like that. But look how long it's taken us to get to where we are today.
Right on. I see we have an informal update, unofficial update here. Next week we are, and again, sometimes I would say if I'm going to post something that looks like an update from a project, please go on their Discord and verify that it's from the project. But next week we're opening beta 2.0 at Crankk for 1,000 more gateways, and in September will be the public onboarding with no limits, and Crankk transactions will be much higher numbers. So that sounds really exciting, and Crankk has been doing incredible work. So I would definitely go check out Crank.io and check out their Discord if you've not a member of that already. Absolutely an amazing project on Kadena, building the future of decentralized and distributed wireless networks. So cool. Let's see here. Okay, I see another question. This one is from Telegram. Great question. How does the layer 2 work? How much decentralization and security of the layer 1 does it sacrifice to increase speed?
That is a really good question. Thank you for that. I love L2 as a conceptual thing. So let me try and explain this in a way that's taking away a lot of the hairy details. A blockchain goes from block to block, updating the state of what you could think of as an immutable public database, right? Each block is an update to that database. And we could just think of it as this chain of states marching on into the future. How you get from a state that was like 10 days ago to a state that's here is going to be by processing all of the transactions that happened in between. But do those transactions need to be processed on the L1 in order to go from state 1 to state N? And the answer is no. You could be doing all of that work of progressing the state elsewhere. You could be doing it on an L2. So the L2 does exactly this. It takes a certain state from the L1, kind of freezes it right there and says, okay, this set of accounts aren't going to be modified. So people will actually transfer their coins into an account that's owned by a lockup contract, moves that account table over to the L2, does all the work there of the transactions that might happen between those users who all did that lockup. But now it can run super fast because you don't have all the constraints of the L1. You just have the constraints of whatever properties you want that L2 to have. And those who are doing transactions in the L2 have signed up to participate. for that L2. So nothing else about the L1, not its decentralization, not its security, not the original validity of the tokens that were locked up. None of them are affected by the existence of the L2. The L2 does all this work. And then at the end of that work, it says, okay, based on all these transactions that I processed way faster than the L1 could do it, I have a new set of account balances. I'm going to send those back to the L1 and say, look, I did all this work for you so that you didn't have to do it. And here's the end result of that work. So the question then is, how does the L1 trust that the L2 actually did that work? There are different schemes for this. There are schemes built around validators, where a whole bunch of people who have stake in the network put their affidavit on that state update and say, I signed that this was valid. There are optimistic scenarios where it's trusted, but other people can come in within 7 days and dispute it and put a fraud claim and say, no, that work wasn't valid. Or you can use something like ZK, where ZK actually gives you a mathematical proof that the work the L2 did is exactly what the L1 would have done had you done it there. And that is where you get a lot of this utility and expressive freedom, and freedom from the constraints of the L1 provided by the L2 without sacrificing anything on the L1.
Right on. Thank you for that. Very cool. The classic gimme alpha question. John, can you share some insight into what the team is working on?
Sure. So every day we're always working on the stability and the security and the ongoing maintenance of the Kadena blockchain. So that's something that never is off of the table. In terms of our business stuff, we're working a lot right now on building an L2 platform that's built out of Chainweb and Pact. So you can use our same technology solutions that power our L1 to build your own L2. That L2 may or may not clear to a different L1 than Kadena. So we're looking at multiple use cases here where maybe there would be an L2 constructed out of Kadena technology that could clear to other L1s, for example. That's all currently being researched, and we're working on proofs of concept of all of those things right now. We're steadily working on ZK and various ways that ZK will intersect with Kadena. There are many, by the way. They don't all have to do with privacy or even with L2s or rollups. There's lots and lots of things you can do with ZK. And then the other area that's getting a huge amount of attention for us internally is smart wallets. And by smart wallets, I mean things like account abstraction on the one hand, where you can have very intelligent accounts that will allow things like spending limits or splitting spends or receives into other multiple accounts. And then the other side of smart wallets, which is the user experience, how it's going to integrate, what kind of APIs we're going to give wallet developers that will just give a more universal experience on Kadena to accessing your money in very intelligent and, well, smart ways. I lost your audio, Tyler.
Thank you very much, John. The coffee sip strikes again. Have a question jumping back to the personnel side of things from Love is in the Air. Wow. Let's just take a moment to appreciate that. How many people are in your team right now?
So my team particularly, so within my department of core technology, I counted 14 people the other day. I was told by our chief operations officer that company-wide, including the consultants that we employ, we're now getting towards 70.
Wow. So definitely have a lot of willpower, manpower, woman power to make things happen. That's fantastic. Smart wallets are huge for DAOs. That's a cool thought. Ron, if you want to embellish on that, I'll throw it up on the screen here as I'm curious what you're thinking about in particular. I agree, but I'm curious what your particular vision is. Is there a threat that from Potato? Is there a threat that TVL could move from KDA with L2 settling on another L1? What will make people run on Kadena? Kind of a macro question, I guess.
Yeah, this is a very fair question because an L1, they're becoming more and more commoditized, right? There are more of them out there. They give people the ability. L2s are going to give people the freedom to switch from one project to another. ZK bridging is another thing that is a use of ZK outside of L2 that's going to make more and more of these chains able to cross-communicate. So then you have to ask, what's the actual value proposition? What does the Kadena L1 offer people that would make this a place you would want to run your app? And at the moment, what we have is we still have a great scalability story without sacrificing decentralization. We have low gas costs, and we have the ability to keep gas costs manageable by apps being able to move from chain to chain. We have the freedom at any time to increase the number of chains that are present within Chainweb to address scalability issues, or if gas becomes too congested in a particular chain. So if I were an app developer, I would be asking myself, what chain out there in the world can I run my app on that's going to give my users the most consistent quality experience? And that's where I think Kadena's L1 is still a very high value proposition. Because we are a proof of work chain, we've got decentralization in our bones. We are a simpler, more secure platform because of that simplicity. And we don't sacrifice in terms of allowing scalability to moderate steep gas prices.
Right on. I see you back to the idea I posed by Ron the Wizard. We have Kobe in the house. Great to have you here, Kobe, as always. Oh man, we can do all types of interesting smart wallet DAO functions since they can kind of be one and the same, just like Floppy said. So Kobe, of course, is of Eucalyptus Labs and Koala Wallet. Thanks for the thought, Kobe. We got to have you back on a campfire sometime shortly and chat everything smart wallets. There's so much going on with Koala and with DAOs, with Swarms Finance. And I saw that people are now starting to build some minor DAOs and all sorts of cool things. So really excited to see how the new frontier of Marmalade and DAOs and smart wallets builds a new experience in crypto for us all. Is the name of the L2 already known? I don't believe it is. And I don't believe it's known by anyone. So
we just refer to the project as L2. We don't use a code name even.
Yeah. Do people want to help ideate and brainstorm L2 names? If so, drop some potential names for a layer 2 for Kadena in the chat, and we'll throw up some of them as they come up. So all ideas that are fun, happy, positive are good ideas. So feel free to throw out anything that comes to mind. All right. Yep. So Josser, we talked about Ledger earlier. If you go back in the call, maybe in the first 10 minutes, we talked about it, maybe around minute, 5 or 7, something like that.
Right.
Let's see here. Gotta remove the banner. All right. I see. So, hey, Breaks, you asked a really good question, but it just comes into price just a little bit too much. If you want to rephrase it, I'll put it on the screen. Let's see here. One hit a quitta. Nobody in crypto currently cares about decentralization or functionality, and just hype in Pumponomics. If they did, ETH would be the top dog right now. Interesting. So yeah, I mean, there's different folks that are in crypto, right? Some people are in it to make a quick buck. Some people are in it to build new technology. And ETH, as the largest ecosystem, has the biggest mix of both parties. I'd also say that we've seen incredible projects like Uniswap on ETH, bringing out DeFi and creating that, or soul-bound tokens, or there's been all sorts of great innovation done on Ethereum. And so, it's tricky, right? Because sometimes you have the technology gets built first, and then the hype follows. Other times you have the hype first, and then the technology follows the hype. And so, it's interesting to think about everyone's motivations. But there is a reality to the fact that attention begets more attention.
Right. And if I could say something to that too, Tyler, from an experience I had at ETHcc, you could make the same argument to say nobody cares about gas, because look at how much people on Ethereum are willing to spend on gas. But I was at Ethereum, and one of the things they had was a booth for this Ethereum name service. And it was this kind of really cool card that they took your picture, they printed your picture on it. It had near field technology so that you could use it like to tap on other people's cards, and it would register on the blockchain that you had met that person. All very kind of cool stuff. So I love playing with all of these new ideas, this new technology. So I was in line and I was asking them, so what do I have to do? So I got their app, put it on my phone. They said, pick a name, blah, blah, blah. I did all that stuff. And then came the registration. And to register the name on the Ethereum blockchain, so that's all that it was just the registration of my name, jwigley.eth, right? The price in the app was telling me $50. And I thought, well, this is just something I wanted to play with to see how it was going to work. This isn't worth $50 to me. So I said no. And that's all gas cost. As I was watching, it fluctuated from 50 down to 20, back up to 30. Like, I didn't know what the amount was going to be. So you could say, based on the actions of the Ethereum community, that gas doesn't matter. But at the same time, if this is going to be a barrier to people who aren't flush with cash, who just want to play with stuff, who just want to give things an opportunity. So if that price had been 5 cents, I would have been like, well, of course, like, sign me up. I want to try it out. I want to give this thing a try. So this is all about also removing barriers to people who aren't yet in this crypto community with us. And they may care about these things more than the people who are deeply entrenched do today.
Yep. Right on, right on. I saw a question here. Let's see here. Saw a bunch of interesting questions. Oh, first of all, we have a bunch of names for the L2 that people have thrown out. So let's throw some of these. Kadena Starnet. Nice. I like it. Reform. Okay. Right on. ZKDA. That's pretty solid.
That's cool. I like that.
ZKDA is honestly like pretty sick. That's a great one. Zadena. Very nice. Benster L2. I don't think we'll be going with that one, but K2A. Okay. Yeah. I like it. I like it.
Clever.
Yeah, very clever. Ron, yeah. Swarm. So Ron was responding back to his earlier idea. Swarm style that buys a miner, hosts it via KMC, could send mining rewards to a smart wallet, which automatically pays us our share. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I think smart wallets and DAOs start to blur. I see the point. That's very interesting. Let's see here. I see that breaks sort of rephrase the question. All right, so there's a question from Breaks that basically comes down to what's your take on burning or reducing emissions or having a lockup incentive to ensure that the economy keeps on running?
A tokenomics question. So this one I'm just going to pass on because this goes well outside my bailiwick.
Yep.
I'm not involved in all the tokenomics thinking and decisions, and I don't want to make any statements on behalf of the company that would be inaccurate.
Yeah, very good. So it's a good question. It's a fair question. It's a question that's a combination from the Kadena perspective for Will or Stewart, and then remember also that that's not just a Kadena core question. That's a ecosystem question to all of the miners. And so I know that there's no individual that speaks for the miners, so it's sort of hard to ask the miners a question per se. But you can ask KMC, you can ask folks that you have talked to or heard in the community that are miners. I would say ask other people that are miners and see what they think, because ultimately anything that affects tokenomics in that way is effectively voted on by the hash rate of the network. Mm-hmm. And so the ultimate arbiters of tokenomics is the network's hash rate and what people want to do there. Let's see here. Rainbow Chain, like Rainbow Road on Mario Kart. I like Rainbow Chain. Mm-hmm. What comes first, Koala L2 or Lynx L2? Interesting. Koala Lynx. Koala Lynx L2 name confirmed. That's absolutely fantastic. Pink as a L2 name, yeah. For some reason, I was thinking Pink and like Taylor Swift. Swift is a cool name if it weren't for the Apple programming language Swift. Mm-hmm, but maybe you can always
maybe very appropriate too for what.
Yeah. Swift ZK Swift. I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe some things to workshop there. Yeah, Pink is pretty fun. Build Kadenians build. Yeah, could be a good DAO name too. It's best to get into the real projects that are building real utility and use cases like Kadena, and then just wait for the long run. No quick flip here. Real projects will take over in due time. Yeah, we're all about the builders, all about the technology, all about what people are actually creating. That's the name of the game. That's the Campfire way. Mm-hmm. Kuro V2. Tyler, man, we want to see you at the next meeting in a classic shirt or even a suit. Okay. Yeah, can make that happen. I am... Sadly, I might be gone next week. I need to double check calendar, but I'll definitely be back here in 2 weeks and maybe even next week. Let's see here. John, very true. That was me. How much thought and energy are Kadena putting into AI technology?
Well, I can tell you in the core engineering, we don't really we're not talking about large language models at all, or how we might apply them.
Yeah. So I've guess I've explored this a bit kind of on my academic research, and also some conversations with some other startups and such. So I've done a little bit of testing in terms of using GPT-4 with writing Pact, and it seems like it's reasonably proficient. So I do think that, we look at the DevX and experience team, that there's potentially opportunities to integrate some language models and basically help share some prompts. But basically, if anyone wants to use GPT-4 or ChatGPT today, what you can do is you can copy code from real world Pact, or from the documentation, or for some of the tutorials, and just copy a bunch of that text. Maybe copy 1,000 words or so, paste it in, and then ask a question about asking GPT to write some code for you, and that will dramatically improve the accuracy of the code that's written. So there's a lot of stuff that can be done right now already, because it's already a pretty amazing tool. But yeah, I think there's potentially opportunities to integrate that more into the learning platform and things like that. It's a good question.
I will mention something I saw at ZK Lambda Week that was interesting. There was a group there. It was two women engineers, and they were thinking about taking a learning model and turning it into a ZK circuit. And the reason why is because they wanted any data that got trained on their model to have a proof of the data provenance, so that the results of the model would be able to say, here's your answer, and it came from this data set. And I could see that kind of provenance information being registered on chain, for example, as a validity proof. So while in core engineering, we might not be thinking of how Kadena is going to be affecting the Kadena L1, I could see our builders or our ecosystem partners pulling AI into the blockchain space.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's also some pretty dramatic, interesting experiments that one could do. Like, for example, you could imagine having a DAO in which you allow the AI to be the arbiter of decisions. And, you put together a vote, and then you have, like, for example, if you're making a referendum, you can have someone create an argument for, an argument against, and then have an arbiter decide. Or, I mean, of course, people can vote. But I think there's tons of opportunities to think about as we look at language models and AIs becoming more and more potent. I've seen people start to try and run businesses by sort of doing what the language model tells them to do, or trying to help generate and move faster. Or, I mean, marketing materials, right? It's incredibly good for marketing. So if someone wants to help with marketing, I mean, there's huge opportunities there. I think there's great opportunities to synthesize content and help interact with communities, or if you have a point you're trying to make to compare different technologies and want to do it in a fashion that takes out negativity and frames it more positively, and while keeping some of the critiques and criticisms, language models are great for rephrasing. There's lots of ways we can use language models to help in terms of the product and the marketing and the interacting. And then thinking about how to use language models in a more fundamental way in terms of technology layer becomes a little more complicated. So, there's some loose thoughts that people floated around. If you can do some kind of proof of work style thing using language models and the compute, and it turns out that's a little bit tricky because the cryptographic soundness isn't quite there. There's this emerging field called homomorphic computing that allows for you to kind of combine cryptography along with some computation, but it's not there in terms of being able to actually do interesting computation yet. So yeah, I think about this space more in like a daydreaming sense, but I think in terms of core day-to-day, as John earlier said, there's little yet that interacts with like core blockchain tech development, but there's a lot that interacts at like the DAO layer. There's a generative AI NFT project on Kadena. I'm blanking on the name. If someone wants to post that in the chat, that one's super cool. It came across my radar a few weeks ago. So yeah, I think it's going to be ecosystem. There's huge opportunities. Let's see here. Okay, catching back up on the chat. Yeah, could ChatGPT be used to accelerate projects building of Pact? I think so, especially if you get an error. So if you're a Pact developer, next time you do this, try this. Would love to have you report back. If you get an error, paste the code into ChatGPT and paste the error message and ask for an explanation of what went wrong. And I'd be very curious to hear if that works or not.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Pekka. SWIFT is also the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunications.
Right.
Yeah.
Very good. Point.
Let's replace that with a layer 2. How hard would it be to get a Kadena domain names like ENS, where it's all on chain? I mean, there is a Kadena domain names project. That's a third-party project that's had some traction, so worth checking out.
Oh, and I will answer that to say not hard at all. The way Pact is designed would make creating a name system very, very easy.
Very cool. Cryptcats, rather. I see a lot of people comparing KD and Kaspa. What are your thoughts on this? What do you feel you guys do better? Regardless, love both projects. John, are you familiar enough with Kaspa to do compare and contrast?
I am not.
Yeah, so as I understand, Kaspa is a proof of work blockchain that is backed by a DAG, which is a directed acyclic graph. I don't fully understand all the trade-offs of Kaspa's particular implementation, but the idea of using a DAG has been around in crypto for at least 5 years or so, and there's been a few other projects that have built these. So Kadena also uses a graph structure in terms of how the blocks connect to each other called Chainweaver. And there's some very interesting graph theoretic reasons for why Kadena uses a static structure that is always identical and always the same, as opposed to a dynamic structure that can form any arbitrary edges between blocks. So in a static structure, like in Chainweb, what happens is we can guarantee certain properties, like the distance from one block to another block based on the number of layers is constrained. And this is called the diameter of the graph. Mm-hmm. So right now, I think you can go to any other block in 3 hops on the network. And so that means within 3 layers, you can go from any chain to any other chain directly in terms of the edges. When you have a directed acyclic graph, you no longer have constraints. And so as a result, if you still think about layers of the graph, you can have very, very long periods before one block connects to another particular block. And there becomes dependencies that are no longer guaranteed in terms of when you can know that a block or a layer is formed. And so I can't speak to Kaspa because I'm not intimately familiar with its details. But in the past, the reason why we didn't see DAGs adopted in 2018 and 2019 is because ultimately there would become bottlenecks where a certain block would effectively bottleneck the network. And as a result, even though in principle you could have higher throughput and parallel activity, there ultimately became constraints where a certain path would become blocking. And so as a result, we haven't seen DAGs actually, when it comes to applications, succeed in scaling up networks. And so the advantages in throughput haven't existed. And we've seen some related problems with Cardano with some of the UTXO type of woes around DEXs and transaction throughputs. There's some related ideas there. So again, I'm not an expert in Kaspa. I haven't looked at the technical details. I'm speaking more at the broad perspective as to where DAGs have historically hit stumbling blocks and why projects like Ethereum looked at DAGs and decided not to do it, and why other folks have looked at that space and not done it. Now, that said, I think from a graph perspective, DAGs are fascinating, and there's cool things that can be done. And so I know Kaspa has been increasing popularity, and so there might be something there. I don't mean to criticize, but rather add some historical context. And Kadena did think about different graph structures, and we use this beautiful structure called a Peterson graph. And you can go on Wikipedia and look up Peterson graph, and basically it's a gorgeous structure that has all the best properties. It is the ideal structure. There's no way to build a graph that has more ideal properties in terms of how few steps it takes to go from one node in the graph to any other node. And so in some sense, Kadena guarantees with Chainweb that we have the ideal structure of how blocks can relate to each other. And in a DAG, you could, in theory, create a Peterson graph, but in reality, you end up with graphical structures that are much more unwieldy. And so, this is an example of how an intelligent constraint and a beautiful constraint can actually increase productivity and throughput. So I hope that's a useful question without being too technical. And yeah, thank you for framing that question in a positive way. Ultimately, I think that thinking about innovations and how blockchains relate is good. And I know there's a lot of overlap between the Kadena and Kaspa communities because they're both proof of work. So I think having respectful dialogue and learning and doing that is all a good way to approach it. Okay. We got a lot of more comments here. Crank. Crank the crank. I like it. Yeah. Let's see here. Let's see, I'm behind by 3 minutes. Yeah, I'm behind by 3 minutes at least now. John, hire me. Okay, very good. Yeah, always looking to hire, so shoot him an email. Let's keep Kadena lettuce. Yeah, I know we're basically at the end of time here. So just trying to catch up here on the hundreds. Okay, love that. L2 name Titan. Hey, Titan's pretty cool. That's pretty badass. Dadgummit. Always like the puns. DAGs are also used in potential outcome model and econometrics. Yeah, absolutely. I've done a decent amount of probabilistic graphical models that use DAGs to represent conditional probability distributions and dependencies between relationships. And DAGs are also used in biology to represent gene expression networks. And DAGs are also used in machine learning and statistical inference. And yeah, DAGs are cool. I like DAGs.
And Git is powered by them.
All right. Koala lace. I like that. Like the neural lace of science fiction. Kadena will not reward you, but you will get kudos from me, and I'll put a picture up on a campfire. How about that? Chainweb is also patented. Yeah, there is a patent around Chainweb and that technology. Yeah, no problem, Crit Cats. Thank you for phrasing that question in a good way. Oftentimes people have a good question, and sometimes it's framed in a way that makes it hard to answer, and you frame that in a very positive and productive way. So keep that up. And, I'd encourage you to, as you interact with communities, right? If you're in the Kaspa community, ask them in a similar way, right? Because it's all about, being positive and learning and growth and learning people's perspectives. All right, folks. Thank you all for tuning in. This has been an awesome campfire. John, I'll leave it to you if you have any parting words or goodbyes that you'd like to say.
Just thank you to everyone for coming. It's really great to see such an enthusiastic and engaged community. I love that you're asking all of these questions. Please, if you get frustrated sometimes that we're not able to give you immediate answers on everything you want to know about, doesn't mean we're not interested to keep hearing from you and to keep hearing the questions. And we'll just keep at it. We'll just keep doing the best that we can to get everything out the door.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Kadena fam, Kadena army, Kadena crew. What a pleasure to have you all here with us. Until next week, make sure to drop a like, and we'll see you soon. Be well, everyone.